And so I was just thinking about all of these deaths, really, and wondering like, well, what was the destination for these people? And you know, and a lot of times we talk about wanting to be able to offer the uncommon helps. Like if somebody's hungry, somebody can take them a loaf of bread. Somebody needs a place to stay. Somebody's got a spare bedroom. Somebody needs money. Somebody can send them $25. So anybody can do that. But what is it need do people have that is uncommon, that we don't have the achievement, the attainment, the capacity to do? I said, that's what I would want to do. I want to be able to offer the uncommon helps that are needed. And to do that, and that is really the purpose, what part of the purpose, of course, it's for my own awakening, right? My own enlightenment. But what is the purpose for that? It's so that we can help our living beings. And so in these uncommon capacities to help, that has been my recent aspiration. And having had a glimpse of death of these last couple of years, my mind has been moving towards that because the personal fear of death has receded. But then I'm wondering what happens to the one who's not ready? What happens to, you know, and I wanted to be able to help in uncommon ways. So that's the setting of an aspiration. I tell you, if you set an aspiration, you can be assured that the means by which you can realize that aspiration will come to you. Uh, be careful of the aspiration you set. Make sure that you really want to do that. Uh, because if you do it and with your own heart, even if you know you don't have the qualities, you know you don't have the skills, you know you don't have the spiritual attainment, you know you don't possess the virtue, but yet you have the aspiration to enter into that. The it will move the needle so that the circumstances come into your life by which you can cultivate that aspiration, how the means by which you can develop that. You don't have to like just run off and do something. Circumstances will set themselves up in your life that that aspiration can be fulfilled. And that's the great confidence we have as we walk this path. You know, we don't have to lament, oh, I want to be a better person. We don't. We need to have an aspiration and lean into it, knowing that the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas have are there to support us and assist us in developing the qualifications to walk out that aspiration. And so I wasn't very specific about what I want to do. I want to be a this, you know, I want to do a that. It wasn't like that, but I just wanted where there's slim pickings, you know, for support. I wanted to graduate or move up into that space. And it's like, okay, you know, it's gonna require something. It's gonna take something from you're gonna have to maybe give up something to be able to do that. And and I would say I'm willing to do that. And I see that coming to fruition. That's one reason why that's 50% of my joy today, is that I'm seeing that come into my life. And that's my blessing. That's my boon, that I will be able to have an opportunity to serve others and to love others in these uncommon ways. And but the other part of it is to recognize that I'm being welcomed into the family of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Might not be a Bodhisattva yet, but being welcomed, a friend, of the Bodhisattvas. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you about today through telling you the story that's relayed to us about the great opportunity that we have to in being introduced to a particular Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, and uh, and so I'll just get into the story. This is a very little known sutta. It's called the Contemplation Sutta or Sutra, the Contemplation, and I'm sharing from the commentary on it. And this sutra is very different from most sutras because most sutras are talks or instructions that have been spoken in a Dhamma assembly. They're very formal and it's very broad. But this particular sutra was actually taught in a prison in the palace of King Bimbisara. And the and so and it was really taught to three people, Ananda, Moggallana, and the chief or the number one consort of Bimalasara, and her name was Vaidehi. And another difference about this sutta is that the timing of this sutta is critical. I mean, like we can read sutras, we can read them, and we can get lessons from them, philosophical lessons, practical lessons. We can do all of that. But this was being delivered at a specific time for a specific circumstance. It wasn't like knowledge that you should know this. This was a specific circumstance. Something was happening in the moment and something was needed in the moment. There's also a difference in the audience. The audiences for most of the sutras were the practitioners of the Buddha, and they would all gather to hear the teachings or to learn how to develop some particular practice, and then they go off and they practice individually. But this was delivered for them specifically in this moment at this particular time. And and in this sutta, we got the call to come and see her because she had called me and she said, when we came out to visit her before, her faith was aroused in a deeper way. She's a Theravada practitioner, but some Mahayana faith arose. She said her consciousness expanded. There was something, and she was now open to something that she did not know before. And she said because she felt it when we came, and whatever that was, she wanted. That's what she said. And then the next day she wrote another email and she said, I would like to be reborn in another world. Oh, as a monk, is that possible? I'd like to be born in another world without all of this suffering so that I could single focusedly practice. Is there a ritual for that? Do you all have a ritual for that? Or is that something that can be done? And so that's what made me, this was a response to a specific request, a specific question, right? And that's what got me looking. So now I'll tell you the story that is that became the sutra on the contemplation of Buddha Amitayus. That's how they call him, or Amitabha, or Amida. Amida Bitsu, all of those are the same name, the same way we have Samitabhadra, we have Dorji Chang, and all the same, but in different places, call them by different names, right? So it says, at this time in the great city of Rajagriha, there was a prince, the heir apparent, named Ajata Satru, and I'm gonna just call him Ajata for short, right? For the rest of the story. And maybe you remember that Bimbisari, King Bimbisari was a disciple of the Buddha. And he I think he was the one who purchased Bamboo Grove and many other places, and he fed a lot of them, you know. So he was a wealthy king and in his time was a powerful king. But later on, his son decided he was ready to take the throne. Now, his son was a friend of Devadatta's. Devadatta, if you remember, was the cousin of the Buddha, but he was the one who wanted to kill the Buddha and take over the Sangha. So they would have the spiritual power and they would have the political power. And so they talked and they said, let's do this. Devadatta, convinced Ajata to go into a pact with him. And Devadatta did try to kill the Buddha. He wasn't successful. You remember he pushed the boulder down the mountain and it clipped the Buddha's ankle. But through the help of Zambala, who was a forest deity, he helped him. He helped deflect it, and so he wasn't killed. Now, this gets all convoluted if you really think about it, because you start to think of all the characters. You have your leading characters, and then you have your other, side characters. Then you find that one over here plays a really major role, although he had a minor role in the play. But if he hadn't been there, this couldn't have happened. That was the big issue in the play. And you start to see how convoluted karma can be. And that's why Buddha said, don't even like try to wrap your head around it. Just know that it exists, because it's too intricate for you to unravel. And so what Ajata did was he imprisoned his father, and he was going to let him just starve to death. He didn't kill him. He just locked him away in prison. He was going to starve to death. Uh, and Ajata's mother was the number one wife or consort of King Bimbisara. So she got to come and see him. And he liked honey and flour cakes and grapes. So what she did was she would bathe in honey, and then she would pack herself, like maybe how we put on makeup, pack herself with flour. She would wear her garlands like they do in that part of the country. Every morning when we were in India, every morning you go out to thousands and thousands and thousands of garlands. That's the first thing you do in the morning, is go along the street and buy garlands. They've been up all night making them. It's like the flowers never end. And so she would dress herself in many garlands, and she'd have the grapes all in the garlands. And she would go and visit him every day, and he would lick her skin for his sustenance, the honey and the flour, and eat the grapes from the garland. And so after 3 weeks, Ajata went to see, well, is the king dead or what? And it says, no, he's not dead. And he says, why is he not dead? And the guard said, well, because your mother, we found out your mother's coming to see him, and she's giving him sustenance by bathing herself in honey and coating herself with flour and giving him grapes, and giving him grapes. So he was upset. He says, well, I'm going to just kill the king. But he was part of the Shastriya, which is the monarchy caste of India. And it said, you can't, we've had a few bad kings who killed their fathers, but none who have ever committed matricide, none ever killed their mother. And he said, you can't do it because it'll just mess it up for the whole line of kings if we allow you to do that. And so he said, okay, I won't kill him. But he had her then put into a separate prison, and he wouldn't kill the king, and he had his mother also in prison, whole different prison, right? Now, Moggallana was a relative of the consort or the queen. Moggallana was a relative, and of course, Moggallana was one of Buddha's top three disciples, right? There was Sariputta, Moggallana, and Ananda. Okay, so Moggallana was one of her relatives. And so she prayed to the Buddha that he would send her relative Moggallana to her, to talk with her. And the Buddha, hearing her request, wasn't there with her. She just prayed to him, and him hearing her request sent Moggallana and sent Ananda to see her and to be with her. So this is how this is all set up, right? This is done by the queen, and she has and she's saying, I pray, feel compassion towards me and communicate to me the 8 precepts of the Buddha. So she wanted to take the 8 precepts in preparation for her death, right? And so Moggallana at once appeared, and I'm sorry, it was the king Bimalasara, who had been a disciple of the Buddha, asked for Moggallana to come. And so the day after that request, he visited the king. And Buddha also sent Purna to preach the Dhamma to the king. And so he was happy and content when he had heard the Dhamma. So shortly after that, now his mother is locked away and she's going to starve to death too, right? And she said, well, Buddha, I pray that you command a Moggallana and Ananda to come and have an interview with me, come and talk with me. And after this, she grieved and she wept, shedding tears like a shower of rain. And then the Buddha, knowing what she was wishing in his mind, he was at Vulture Peak. And he said, okay, but what she needs, Moggallana can understand. He needs to come as well. And it said that he dispatched Moggallana and Ananda to go to her through the sky. And then he himself disappeared from Vulture's Peak, and he appeared in the royal palace. So this is where there's the Namanicaya, preaching on Vulture's Peak. And then he creates a second Namanicaya that goes to the prison. So he's now preaching at Vulture's Peak, and he's also created a second Namanicaya. I often, or I have occasionally, told the story about a master that I met and who taught me for many years. And one time when I was there visiting with her, a lady got up and told the story about how she was on the bus that morning on her way to work. And a woman sat beside her and said, there's a master in town. You should come out and hear her. And the woman told her where the master would be. And then she got off the bus. And so she came out, and you know who that person was on the bus. It was the master, it was the teacher. And so that's how Namanikaya can be useful. And so I want to skip part of this because it's a long sutta, so it's a long story. Okay, so she asked the Buddha a question, and she made a petition. He didn't answer the question, but he answered her petition. Her question was, "We're all honored one. What former sin of mine has produced such a wicked son?" And again, exalted one, from what cause and circumstances have you such an affinity by blood and religion with Devadatta, which was the Buddha's wicked cousin that was once his disciple and who tried to kill him? So she said, what was this karma that that you're connected with Devadatta and that I have this son that's killing me and his father to take over the kingdom? What was the karma for that? And he didn't answer. She said, "My only prayer is this. May you preach to me in detail of all the places where there is no sorrow and trouble and where I ought to go to be born anew." She knows she's dying. She's going to die. And she said, can you preach to me in detail all of the places where there's no sorrow or trouble, where I ought to go to be born anew? I'm not satisfied living in this world with its depravities, which is full of hells and hungry spirits and brute creatures. In this world of depravities, there are many assemblies of the wicked. May I not hear, I pray, the voice of the wicked in my next life, and may I not see any wicked person. Now I throw my limbs down to the ground before you, and I seek for your mercy by confessing my faults. And I pray for this only, that the sunlight Buddha may instruct me how to meditate on a world wherein all actions are pure. And it says, and at that moment, the world-honored one flashed forth a golden ray from between his eyebrows. It extended to all the innumerable worlds of the 10 directions. And on its return, the ray rested on top of the Buddha's head and transformed itself into a golden pillar, just like Mount Sumeru, wherein the pure and admirable lands of the Buddhas and the 10 directions appeared simultaneously illuminated. And he began to talk about the different worlds. And after she had heard them, she said, although all other Buddha worlds are pure and radiant with light, I should nevertheless wish this was her what? Her aspiration, but her choice, right? So that's the first thing I want you to understand, that there is something in this mix about a choice that we can choose to go to a Buddha land. As a choice, it's not like if you, so what's the qualifications for the choice? That comes the next question. If I could choose to go there, what do I have to do to get there? Okay, but it was her choice. She said, not like just wherever I end up, because of causes and conditions. You see, that's the aspiration that you're talking about, directing her aspiration and her choice. So she said, I choose myself to be born in the realm of Buddha Amitabha, in the world of ultimate bliss, or the world of highest happiness, or it's called Sukhavati. Now I simply pray, teach me how to concentrate my thought so as to obtain a right vision of that land. And so now this is a parting scene that goes back to the king, right? That was her request, right? But now we're back to the king. It says, and at that very moment, the mental vision of that exalted king was perfectly clear, though he was shut up in captivity himself. And he saw the world honored one from afar, and he paid homage with his head in faith. And he naturally increased and advanced in wisdom, whereby he attained to the fruition of an anagami, the third of the fourth grades to nirvana. Now, look at this karmic connection, like how important this is around the company we keep, around the things that we engage in, the things that we do, the things that we say. Here's his wife in captivity talking now with the Buddha, and knowing she's gonna die, knowing he's gonna die too. But she asks, can she be born in a Buddha land? And is that possible? And at the same time, because of her petition and their karmic connection, him in his captivity over here, he was a disciple, right? And he was a good disciple. He might not have been an arhat, but he was a good disciple. And at that moment, he attained to the fruition of anagami. That's a non-returner, so there's four um, levels of attainment in the initial stages. The third or the fourth is non-returner, not returning to this world. And so on the basis of her petition and their karmic connection, that he had the inspiration, at that time, and he attained to the level of anagami. Then the world honored one said, now, do you not know, Vadehi, that Buddha Amitabha is not very far from here? You should apply your mind entirely to close meditation upon those who have already perfected the pure actions necessary for that Buddha country. I will now expound to you fully who they are, and thereby afford all ordinary persons in the future, that's me, on the basis of her request then, he's telling it to her, and he's telling Ananda, make sure you remember it so that it can pass down through posterity. So those who come in later times, like us, will be able to hear this story and know how to take this action. He says, so, and thereby afford all ordinary persons of the future who wish to cultivate these pure actions an opportunity of being born in the land of the highest happiness or ultimate bliss, or to be born in Sukhavati. Oh my goodness. That's why I was so happy this morning, like so overjoyed. What I couldn't even imagine, what we think is, oh, we have so much work. Oh, this path is so hard. I gotta give up this and I gotta stop doing that. I gotta love my enemies. I gotta, and we're like just grumbling and complaining because we don't see the glory and the magnificence of the fruit that's on the path. And so he goes on and he tells them, and it was passed down so that I could know today, so that you could know today. And we would be afforded as ordinary people, of the future, we would be afforded, we could learn how to cultivate the pure actions and create the opportunity of being born in Sukhavati in the Western Quarter. He said, those who wish to be born in that land have to cultivate a threefold goodness. First, they should act filially towards their parents and support them. Serve and respect their teachers and elders. Be compassionate, abstain from doing injury, and cultivate the 10 virtuous actions. We can go down the checklist. Yeah, I didn't act filially towards my mother. I had a mama issue, but luckily for me, before she died, I was able to get over it, And since she died, I've had great regret that I ever considered myself having an issue with her. She had her issues, but I wish I had never had an issue with her issues. If I could go back and do it again with what I know today, I could deal with her with more compassion and more loving kindness. If I could go back and deal with her to then like I am today, I would not have been moved by the things she did that I thought were so harmful to me. I would have been able to endure them. I would have been able to stand with them. I mean, and so I have these kind of regrets because I wasn't developed enough during that time. But I am blessed that I was able to make peace with her, before she passed. And many a night I wept that over something I said to her that didn't really need to be said. Second, they should take and observe the vow of seeking refuge with the three jewels. Fulfill all moral precepts. That all in there, that's a big word, even though it's 3 letters. It says fulfill the moral precepts. Okay, I'm trying my best, to be as virtuous as I can. But I'm not sure whether I'm going to be qualified to into, Sukhavati. I'm not really sure if all is required. And not lower their dignity or neglect any ceremonial observance. Lowering the dignity is when we're like arrogant towards somebody else. We come off in a certain way. It brings our own dignity down because our dignity is based on humility, long suffering, and compassion. I mean, those are the standards, And if you don't have them, anything else that you do, particularly to prop up oneself, is a lowering of your dignity. It's not standing for your dignity. It's actually the lowering of your dignity. And it's also lowering the dignity of the one that you display such behavior towards. And so I'm thinking like I'm pretty good, but every now and then I get a little, every now and then I mess it up. So these it says fulfill all. And so I'm not sure I fulfill all, not I am sure. I don't fulfill all moral precepts, and sometimes I lower my dignity. And it says, and neglect any ceremonial observance. And neglect in ceremonial observance means like, I'm not saying that it's having a lack of respect for the homage that's being offered during a ceremony. Your mind is not there. You're just going through the motions of the ceremony. Or you just think, oh, that ceremony, that's nothing. You don't have to do all that. All that's not required. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But don't denigrate the offering of the ceremony. That's it. You just don't do it. You're better off not being involved in it than to be involved in it with an internal kind of disrespect, you see. And so he's just teaching us how to be. He said, third, They should give their whole mind to the attainment of perfect wisdom, deeply believe in the principle of cause and effect, study and recite the Mahayana doctrine, the great doctrine, and persuade and encourage others who pursue the same course as themselves. Okay, it was started off as three little things. Now everything had like 3 or 4 things. And then to drop in the words all in it, and like this is a losing proposition. It's like a setup. It's like, like you being promised, oh, it's not that, doesn't take that much. All you gotta do is this, this, and this. And now it's like just growing. He said these 3 groups, as enumerated, are called the pure actions leading to the Buddha land. So when we talk about, and when Buddha Master talks about, like all those precepts, all that, you only need 3, avoid doing all evil, do only good, purify your mind. It's a whole lot. It's a whole lot, right? You'll be engaged 24/7. You think you got time to do other things in your life? You really don't. The more you take this up, it's like it grows, and you seem to have less and less time to be involved or engaged in. But the thing is that this gives your life, such a life. You start to look at the life that you had and said, well, yeah, I was having a little fun here and there, and I was drinking with my buddies and got a little bit high, and we laughed and cajoled, and but the more you start doing this, the more it starts to take over your life in a kind of way and bring to fruition something that these others are like the things of the world just start to grow strangely dim. As long as you're not forcing me. If you're forcing me, I don't get it. But if I'm not being forced, if I'm being accosted by it, then I get it. So I don't mind the Dharma accosting me. I don't mind the Dharma overwhelming me sometimes. And yes, it shows my pitiful condition, in my ignorance, that I get so overwhelmed that sometimes I can't do anything but cry, but I don't mind that, because it is the proof of its power impacting me, but not just impacting, but transforming us. Even the body has to be transformed to be able to hold this Dharma and to walk this Dharma out. It takes a different kind of body to do it. And so there are changes that have to take place, biologically, energetically, there are, in order for this sac to be able to hold the consciousness. Sometimes you get so overwhelmed that the body can't contain. It's hard for the body to even contain, this consciousness. It starts moving. It starts expanding out. And so it says these 3 groups are called the pure actions. Vadahi Buddha continued, to clarify, if you do not understand, these 3 classes of actions are the effective cause of the pure actions taught by all the Buddhas in the past, present, and future. And then he turned to Ananda and said, listen carefully, Ananda, ponder carefully on what you hear. I, Tathagata, now declare the pure actions needful for birth in Sukhavati, for the sake of all beings hereafter that are subject to the misery inflicted by the enemy of passions. Well done, Vadahi. Appropriate are the questions which you have asked. Now, she asked like 3 questions. He answered 2 of the 3, right? The one he didn't answer was about karma, right? But he answered that one about the worlds and what you had to do to get in them. And he said, Ananda, be sure to remember these words of mine, the Buddha, and repeat them openly to many assemblies. I, Tathagata, now teach Vadahi and also all beings that will come hereafter, in order that they may meditate on the on the world of Sukhavati, the land of ultimate bliss in the Western quarter. It is by the power of Buddha that it is by the power of Buddha only that one can see that pure land of Buddha as clear as one sees the image of one's face reflected in the transparent mirror held up before one. It is by the power of Buddha only. It is by the power of Buddha only that one can see that pure light. So by my power, can I penetrate and see it? No. It is by the power of Buddha only that one can see the pure land, as clear as one sees the image of one's face reflected in a mirror. When one sees the state of happiness of that country in its highest excellence, one greatly rejoices in one's heart and immediately attains a spirit of resignation, prepared to endure whatever consequences may yet arise, or whatever, once you have seen it. Only by the power of the Buddha can you see it. But once you have seen it, you are resigned. Nothing else matters. Now, I've been pretty happy even before now, but I'm about to get real happy because I'm about to embark in this particular practice right now. It's like putting together pieces to a puzzle. And there's a picture of the puzzle, and you got 100 pieces laying on the table. Kay does those 1,000-piece puzzles. It's so crazy. She does those 1,000-piece puzzles, she spreads them out on the table. And well, I should do it with her. And I hate doing it, but she loves doing it. So I'll go and I'll look for all the things that I think can be around the edges. Go ahead. And then I've done my part and I'm gone, But she sits there and in about a week, she got the whole puzzle put together. And then she just breaks it down, gives that puzzle away, and buys a new one. Okay, so that's sort of how we learn the Dharma. We can't learn everything at one time. We have to study this, get a firm understanding of that, learn how to activate it or put our intention behind it to put it into practice. Then we have some realization, and now maybe we can't go any further with that. Because we don't know this and we don't know this and we don't know this. So now we have to go over here and we'll learn a little bit about this. First of all, how it directly connects to that. That's the main thing. It might connect to some other things, but right now we're just trying to connect that piece of the puzzle to that, and we'll learn. And it's this way that we learn. It's not like this by rote academic kind of thing, but it's connecting the pieces together, and they start to form a picture. And that part of the picture is all red, and that part's all gray. So that's the front of the engine right there, and that's the smoke. So now I can start separating, putting all the red pieces over here, all the gray pieces over here, all the white pieces down here, the black pieces over here. And now I start to piece a few of them together. I got 5 black pieces together over here. So I'm getting a little picture of this and how this works. In the beginning, those 10 red ones didn't make any sense to me, but now I'm fitting them together and I see they form the front of the engine. And now I'm going to be able to see how to put together all of these pieces and ultimately have the whole puzzle put together, right? My difficulty is that that's going to take too long. It's going to take too much effort, why would anybody want to do it? And it's the same way with the Dharma. If you don't give me a straight roadmap, I'm not interested in this. I don't want to go through anything. I don't want to have, I want you to answer all my questions. I want, and we have our way of trying to move through the Dharma and force something from the Dharma or force it to meet some criteria that we have, and that's just not how the way the puzzle fits together. And so we have to learn some patience. Now that's a good practice for me for developing patience. Forget that thought.
Even to say the word. Even to say the word.
Yes.
There's something I want to share. When I was about 20 years old, someone did my astrological chart. And he looked at it, he was, oh, wait a minute. Oh my God, there's an alignment here. And I said, yeah, what does that mean? He said, well, there's a lot of karma meaning in your lifetime with the planets alignment. Well, yo, what does that mean? And he said something that was really interesting. He said, all the past lifetimes meet in one place and you have to take it and give it new meaning. And he said, you have to deal with the sadness of the universe. I mean, this was a young guy saying these things to me. I was only like 20 years old, around the time I started reading Zen Buddhism and whatnot. And I never forgot it. It stayed with me. I had to deal with the sadness. And what you're speaking of here, the samsara suffering that we have to deal with is one big chore. But then there's a place of nirvana, of understanding, of not being engulfed in the suffering. And so I've taken on that task to, and I know if you look at some of my emails of seeing what's going on in the world and what have you, that I can see the suffering and not internalize it. And sometimes I do, like you said before, just cry, in general, and just say, here I am. Let me go to the Sunday service and be around people who have an understanding, because it's overtaking me. So I'm sort of feeling a seesaw in this conversation of the tremendous challenge of the suffering, which is a huge part of Buddhism, is understanding that there's suffering all around, everywhere we go, and life is suffering and all that. But it having that understanding and being able to get to a different place and not just ask for, gee, I want to be born and I'll be okay there. No, I think you have to churn through the suffering and somehow gain an understanding of the balance of it all to be at peace. So
that's why they call these provisional teachings. All of the things that we're studying and learning, I mean, they're and we talk about the illusory nature of this life. It's like you're going through these things and you're having to develop yourself in these kinds of ways, but they're just provisional means. The bottom line is, at the end of the story, we all win. That's the end of the story. But between now and then, it's gonna be a whole lot of suffering before we get it right. And so these are all provisional stories, and that's what's so good about the ending of this sutta. It tells us, it takes us beyond the provisional to the ultimate. And so he says, you and all other beings besides ought to make it your only aim, with concentrated thought, to get a perception of the Western Quarter and Sukhavati. You will ask how that perception is to be formed. I will explain it to you now. All beings, if not blind from birth, are uniformly possessed of sight, and they all see the setting sun. You should sit down properly, looking in the western direction. Prepare your thought for a close meditation on the sun. And then he goes through a whole type of meditation. And that was one of 12 meditations that he gave. That this is the first one. Then he went and he talked about the perception of water. And then when he finished that one, he talked about several others. And I'm gonna skip those because he said those are ones that should be used while he was here. And then she said, but what about when you are no longer in the world? Then what should we use? He said, those who practice a meditation on the Buddha's body will also see the Buddha's mind. It is great compassion that is called Buddha's mind. And it is by absolute compassion that he saves all beings. So through glimpsing the Buddha's body, we will also see the Buddha's mind. And that's the reason why we do visualization practices. So they said, well, okay, so what happens after that? He said, those who wish by means of their serene thoughts to be born in the Western land should first meditate on an image of the Buddha, who is 16 cubits high, seated on a lotus flower in the water of the lake. The real body and its measurements are actually unlimited, incomprehensible to the ordinary mind. So just start with a huge image of the Buddha in front of me. So this morning when we were singing and we put on homage to the three Buddhas, that's what I was doing. I was imagining in my mind, the manifestation of the Buddhas, of the bliss body of the Buddhas, but like in the Manakaya form, as if they were standing before me. That's what I was doing in all of their largeness, receiving me. And I was overcome as I imagined this, created this, if you will, in my mind, because if I am imagining it, I'm creating that, right? And so, and it said, by the efficacy of this, those who think of and remember them shall certainly be able to accomplish their aim. And then he went on to say that besides the Buddha, imagine the two bodhisattvas, Avalokiteshvara or Kuan Yin, and Mahasama Prapta, who are dispatched to come and get us. He said, now there are 9 levels. Oh, and then it talks about, in this practice, it talks about imagining a world that has all of the finest adornments, flowers falling from the sky, fragrant and beautiful in color, gems of every sort and every kind, filling fountains and fountains of the purest water, just everything that you can imagine that's good and that's beautiful, with our own ordinary mind, and and that's all before you imagining. And those represent things, those represent the qualities of good speech, the qualities of virtue, the qualities, uh, of morality, the qualities of helps, the qualities of attainment, and these are just the outer adornments that represent those kind of mental qualities, so that there is no evil person there, no wicked person there, no deficient person there. And he says, and just imagining this is like with your mind. What does your mind imagine now? What thoughts go through your mind now? What images go through your mind now? When we're watching the news and we're looking at the bombings and I got on some kind of news feed on police brutality of Black people. I don't know how to get off it, but every day I get a whole slew of news stories about police beating Black people. I'm like, I must have clicked on something, and once I clicked on that, like I just can't get rid of them. They're TikTok or something, but it's just constant, just and not even a full story, just a click of the most brutal part of it. So you just kind of flash, have that image, and things like that. And I'm saying, like, this is not, he's telling us what kind of images to conjure up and what the things that we conjure up represent. So a ruby is not just a ruby, it's not just a gem, but it represents a certain kind of quality or a certain kind of character, or a certain kind of attainment or enablement, or, and so now we're sort of like mixing, and we're moving from outer adornments to inner qualities, inner adornments. And he says, and we're thinking about all of the ones who have gone before us, who have attained those qualities. So how many of us read stories about the different arhants and masters that attained? How many search out stories? Wonderful. We should read their life stories. We should read their life stories. If I die and I have some attainment, make sure you write down my life story. If I don't die with any attainments, forget about the story. Because it's not going to take somebody where they need to go, because it's not going to give them, the kind of lift that they need. But I hope before I die, maybe I'll have some kind of attainment that you could write the story. Otherwise, it's a story not finished. And so it's not worth telling. That just leaves you somewhere, but never towards seeing the destination. But he said we should read these stories because it will arouse something. It will arouse something in us. And it says that, and then he began to talk about who's going to be in there. Now, we talked about what the qualifications were to be in these places, right? Like they deserve it, but do I? When you about dying, you be thinking about those things. I was like, so sure, I'm like, okay, but if I got the note, that it's in an hour from now or 3 days from now, I wonder how much work I think I need to do. Something else might come to my mind. I might not think I'm quite ready yet, where I thought I was ready. But even as you start moving towards that time, you do know what you have accomplished, and you know that it's going to bear fruit after its own kind. That's why we do it. Not because you see me doing good, but because I know if I plant a pear seed, I'm going to get a pear tree and not an apple tree. And if I want a lemon tree, don't plant a persimmon seed, So that's one part of it. But after a while, something takes over, like there's an aspiration that takes over. And it's not like do this and you got this, but it's like enjoying the beauty of feeding people with my fruit, with what I grow. I could never have a garden. Even if I had a garden, you probably shouldn't eat whatever it is I grow, because I don't like gardening. And so all that's going in that is like, I don't know why I'm doing it. Am I doing it to make money to sell the fruit? Or, what I'm saying is what I put in that would not be worth you eating. And so after a while, we're planting something because we love the beauty of it, you know? And because when someone sees it, it puts a smile on their face. You know, when somebody just walks by you, you know, they don't know what it is, but we catch things from people as we walk by them. I used to sneak out the monastery in Riverside. Master said I couldn't go out. She let Panyadeepa go out. She let Kay go out, but I couldn't go out. So I would sneak out in the back and go through a board that had, lift that board and go through there and then sneak back in. So one day I come in and she's right there at the board like this, you know, and she said, you think I don't have any attainment. I don't know that you're sneaking out the back. She said, but the reason I'm here right now is because you brought something back to the monastery, a sickness that you picked up off of somebody that you passed on the street. You know, and then she had to do a thing on me because he had a cancer in his knee, and I picked it up walking past him on the street. Said, you're so stupid, you don't even know that you picked it up. Because you don't even know yourself. You don't even know things, you know. And I tell you for your safety to stay in. And you know, and then she took care of it. I know. So another time I love peanut butter. Or I used to. And when it first got there, you only had Chinese food. You did not have anything like peanut butter, you know, and jelly. And I'd be sitting there sometimes, oh God, it's peanut butter. You know,
Talking about suffering.
yeah, right. And so one day she looks at me and she rolls her eyes and she just walks out the door. I'm nice. She was like, that's why I could handle Buddha Master, because I had some mean ones. She looks at me and rolls her eyes, she walks out the door. She comes back in with a jar of peanut butter and she slams it on the desk. Now will you get back to work? And so then after that, I began to be a little more careful about what I thought, you know, or the things I said about her to Panyadeepa when we were on campus and off campus. I began, you know, I was she reading mine, so I had to be a little bit more careful, which is a good thing for me because I really needed to be more careful. Okay, but now I'm closing. I'll be finished in 10 minutes. I'll be finished by 1:30. So the Buddha said, okay, there are 9 classes of land in Sukhavati. Now, how will you see Sukhavati? Said, for those in this time, and he called it the Dharma ending age. He said, imagine you have to, with your own mind, picture a Buddha, right? Standing 13 cubits tall, just real tall, out like Buddha going out to the sky. And Mahasamapratha and Kuan Yin on either side. And envisioning the Sukhavati land just filled with all of the finest adornments that your mind can fritter up. You know, everything that's beautiful to you, silks and brocades and, you know, just anything that you think is beautiful. A lot of Sukha's clothes will be there. It really will. I kid you not. She knows I'm not kidding. It's so beautiful, you know, and all kinds of exotic birds, and when they're singing and instruments, hundreds of thousands of instruments suspended in the sky that sing their own tunes, but the tunes are actually words of praise and power and authority and you know, just whatever you can imagine. So what's wrong? Well, you can imagine things now, things that we shouldn't have any interest in painting an internal picture of and holding on to. What's wrong with envisioning this? So he says to do that. And he says, now there are 9 grades or of categories or realms within Sukhavati. And so he said there are 3 classes of beings who will be born in that land. What are the 3 classes? First, those who are possessed of compassionate mind, who do not injure living beings, who accomplish all virtuous actions according to the Buddha's precepts. Second, those who study and recite the sutras, for instance, this sutra. Third, those who practice the sixfold remembrance. Sixfold remembrance would be the paramitas: generosity, patience, diligence and virtue, mindful concentration, perseverance, and wisdom, right? Okay, so that tells you what we need to be studying and what we need to be practicing. And these 3 classes of beings, by bringing their respective stock of merit to maturity, will become destined to be born there if they have accomplished any of those meritorious deeds. Then he says, for 7 days or even for 1 day. And when one who has practiced these are about to be born in that country, Buddha Amitabha, together with the 2 bodhisattvas, Avalokiteshvara and Mahasamapratapta, and also numberless created Buddhas and 100,000 bhikkhus and shravakas with their whole retinue, and innumerable gods, together with the palaces of the 7 jewels, will appear before him out of regard for his diligence and his courage. Now, how did he say that these appear? They can only appear by the power of Buddha, right? So I always think we're doing so much, like, imagining this. He said, like, can you just imagine that? Oh, that's too much to do, um, and he's saying, you just do that and I'll make it so. The awakened mind can make it so. You just try. You just try with your feeble imagination. You just try. And he says, out of regard for your diligence and courage to just try, then the bodhisattvas will offer you a diamond seat. Thereupon, Amitabha himself will send forth magnificent rays of light to shine over your body as you are dying, over the dying person's body as the body is dying, the separation of the body and the consciousness. And the many bodhisattvas will offer their hands and welcome you. And the bodhisattvas will praise the glory of the one who has practiced these meritorious deeds and convey an exhortation to his mind. And when that newcomer, having seen this, rejoices and leaps for joy and looks at himself, he will find that instead of that dying body in the bed, he will find his own body seated on that diamond throne. And in that moment, he will have been born there. Such are those to be born in the highest form of the highest grade to Buddhahood. And so now, that's when the all question starts to get into your mind. Like that sounds like a great promise, but that all is a little sticky. I'm not so sure I'm gonna make it. Then he says, but next, beings who will be born in the middle form of the highest grade are those who do not necessarily learn, remember, or recite the Mahayana Sutras, but fully understand the meaning of the truth contained in them. And having a firm grasp of the highest truth, do not speak evil of the Mahayana doctrine, but they deeply believe in the principle of cause and effect, who by bringing these good qualities to maturity seek to be born in that. So now it says, oh, my son, when they come to meet you, or oh, my daughter, in the Dharma, you have practiced the Mahayana doctrine, you've understood and believed the highest truth. Therefore, I now come to meet and welcome you. And he and the 1,000 created Buddhas extend their hands all at once. And when that man looks at his own body, he will find himself not the one dying in that bed, but suddenly seated on a purple gold throne. And that man will then descend from that seat and make obeisance to the Buddha, praising and eulogizing the world-honored ones. And after 7 days, he will immediately attain to the state of the highest perfect knowledge and Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, from which he will never fall away. Next, he will fly to all the 10 regions and successively serve all the Buddhas therein. He will practice many a samadhi in the presence of those Buddhas, and after the lapse of a lesser kalpa, he will attain a spirit of resignation to whatever consequences may hereafter arise, and he will also obtain a prophecy of his future destiny, always in the presence of a Buddha. So I'm thinking now, do I even meet that qualification? You know?
Cause and effect, we got that.
Yeah, I said, okay, that one I believe in cause and effect.
I think it's a lot simpler than that, you know, the simplicity is where you attain it, I think. If you live in kindness and compassion and if I stand up in this chair and I walk in that direction, knowing that everything I'm doing is in kindness and I don't ever have evil intent in who I am, I think that gives me the joy that you were defining later. It's in the joy of the flower.
Well,
It's
it
in the
will
joy.
have its attainment, right? So there's attainment in all of those things. What attainment do you choose? You know, I might choose to stay in a budget motel and save my money. I might choose to stay in the Hilton for more luxury, or I might choose to stay. I get to choose. This is about choices right now. But I don't want to deflect from this story. I want you all to get the imprint of this story rather than what we think, because it is important to get this. And it's gonna come out somewhere near what you said, but not in the way you think, because it ain't about you or it ain't about me. And that's what the beauty of it is. And in spite of all that we might do, doing the best that we can do, when it comes right down to it at the end, it ain't even about us, you know. But we have to go through these provisional trainings just so that we can understand and inherit and dwell in the splendor of perfection. That's like teaching your child how to act properly in the street, you know, so that when she's out in the street, somebody won't have to beat her, you know. That's why I teach my kids how to be respectful to people. Because you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, you're gonna get hurt. You know, and so it's kind of like that. So that's what provisional teachings are, is so that you can enjoy actually the fruit of things, you know. And so we have those who met all the conditions, right? Then it said, well, they met not all of them, but most of them, right? And so I think, okay, so well, now maybe this includes me, because maybe I'm not Vajrayana, but I'm Mahayana, and I'm holding these Mahayana. Now he's gonna get to someone who may not be Mahayana, they might just be studying certain Theravada principles of touch not, taste not, handle not, you know? And he says, there are those born in the lowest form of the highest grade. This class of beings believe in cause and effect, and without slandering the Mahayana doctrine, simply cherish the thoughts of obtaining the highest awakening, and by bringing this good quality to maturity, seeks to be born in that land. So this is a matter of You could stay at the budget motel, or you could stay at the Hilton. The budget costs $50 and the Hilton is $200. If you have $200, you're welcome to stay at the Hilton, but you can't stay at the Hilton for $50. You can have shelter. It will be at the budget motel. Because that's what your virtue buys, pays for. You understand it? Okay. It's something like that. There was no point in us thinking we can do the least and inherit the most. Because it goes against the law of cause and effect. That's what I'm saying. And so when we start really looking and examining, I don't want to get to the place where, because I want it to be that way, I act as if it's that way. And then when it's time for the recompense, cause and effect, I goofed. And so that was, he talked about the 9th, the 8th, and the 7th, at the highest realms, and those would be bodhisattvas, and they would be bodhisattvas and Buddhas. And so I'm thinking, if I died today, would I basically, honestly, would that be the fruit, the seeds that I planted? Now, we don't believe in cause and effect. Then we may not have done anything. We just want it because we want it. So I'm thinking, I don't know, I might not make it. Then he says, but then there's the 6th realm. Those are in the highest form of the middle grade. They observe the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts. They practice the moral precepts. They don't commit the 5 deadly sins. They don't bring blame or trouble to anybody. And they bring these good qualities. That's not the same qualities that some others have brought, but they brought a middling range of good qualities. And he said, I have a world. There is a world for them, because by virtue of my vow of perfection, I created it. Somebody else can create, candles, and somebody else can create beads, and somebody else I can create a world that one can live in. And he said, and on the eve of such a person's departure from his life, I, surrounded by bhikkhus and dependents, will appear before him, will preach the Dharma of suffering, of non-existence, of impermanence, and of non-self. And I will praise the virtue of homelessness, that's monastics, that can liberate one from all suffering. And at the sight of that Buddha, that believer will excessively rejoice in his heart, and he will soon find himself seated on a lotus flower. So one had a lotus flower, one had a golden throne, one had the purple throne, one had the, so, I mean, he will immediately attain to the fruit of our hardship, gain the 3-fold knowledge and the 6 supernatural faculties, and complete the 8-fold emancipation. Now, remember what she asked me. She said, I would like to be born a monastic in another world where there is no suffering. And now I'm directed to this sutta. I said, okay, I will see if I can find, I didn't know. I never knew this sutta even existed. But because I wanted to be able to give an uncommon offering to a sentient being, I told her, whatever you want, ask the question. Just ask it to the universe. And that was what she asked. Could she be born in? And then she comes in and asks me, like, I don't know. And I get directed towards this sutta and give her the answer, before she dies, and tell her what to do in her final moments. where to set and direct her mind. You know, while her family's all loving and crying, and so where you need to set your sight and set your mind. And she's giving me all the signs that she's hearing, you know, and we're sitting there witnessing. I mean, this whole thing. I mean, if you don't get it, you don't get it. And so, and so that answered that question for her. But maybe, let's say, some of these things, like she rejected. She did not only not take up Mahayana teaching, she rejected them. And she wrote me and said, because I saw so many changes happening, I didn't know what to make of it and I couldn't understand it. So I just stepped away from it. Said, but when you all came to see me, there was something so powerful about your presence that if it was true, whatever you all have, I wanted. This was less than 2 weeks before, you know, she died. It was less than 2 weeks ago. I mean, just in that one time, what if I had never continued in this path? I would never have been able to meet her on her dying bed, to be a friend to her, to offer something, to be available, not to search out, to find the teaching that answered her question. I mean, you just look at this and you become insignificant, totally minuscule, just something in the whole, the whole ball of yarn, you know, and how much is moving in a capacity that's so much more than the little bit that we contribute, you know. And so then he goes on and he talks about, even if a person wasn't a monastic and be able to attain the fruition of arhatship, there are those who will be born in the 5th plane, the middle form of the middle grade, who observe the 8 precepts or take the seminary or seminara precepts, novice precepts. And there it is. There's the novice and the fully ordained in another world without suffering, without us talking about, we don't know how we're going to pay our rent, without us talking about, you know, all the things that we gave up cars and houses and land and boyfriends and, you know, and gave up doing this and this career and doing that and doing the other, you know, trying to live the holy life, trying to devote ourselves so that when there is a call made in the heavens, we can get a signal and we can respond. That's what we, you know, gave that all up for, you know. And he said, there's a world. I obviously didn't know about it before. If I had, right, instead of being here, I would have been there. If I had known, that would have been my choice. But I learned it in this life. I got it now. And then he went on that there was a 4th world, 4th plane, the lowest of the middle grade. Then there was the 3rd plane, which is the highest of the low grades. And then there was the 2nd plane, which is the middle of the low world. And then there was even finally. So this tells us to be careful of how we think and know how we can direct our mind, even around those, even concerning those who are what we would call evil or wicked, right? And it says, let me go to the 2nd. Okay, I'll do the 2nd because the 2nd gave me pause. You know, I mean, like I go through some qualification for the sixth level check, for the 6th check, for the 5th check, for the, you know, so I'm like, but then Next are beings who will be born in the middle form of the lowest plane or lowest world realm. If there is anyone who transgresses the 5 and 8 prohibitive precepts and also all the perfect moral precepts, he being himself so stupid as to steal things that belong to the whole community or things that belong to a particular bhikkhu, and not be ashamed nor sorry for his impure preaching of the Dhamma in the case of a preacher. I'm like, oh shit. I'm down here next to the lowest realm. You know, that's why I started getting ashamed and sorry, you know, for my impure preaching of the Dhamma. You know, because I can only share what I have at my level. And you got to know that it is not, that it is a low level. You know, it can help somebody sometime, but I need to recognize the shortcoming of it, you see. And I do recognize the shortcoming. He says, but rather that preacher magnifies and glories himself. Such a sinful person deserves to fall into hell in the consequence of those shortcomings. And at the time of his death, when fires of hell approach him from all sides, he will meet a good friend, a learned teacher, who will, out of greater compassion, preach the power and virtue of the 10 faculties of Amitayus. Now, I think that would be what's the Buddha who vows to go into hell? Kashyapa. Like, you know, then there's Kashyapa waiting at the gate of hell for me to even preach. Should I go? You know, should I go there?
Like Dante's Inferno,
Mm-hmm.
takes you by the hand, walks you through, you see the suffering.
Yeah. And he said, and who will out of great compassion preach the power and the virtue of the 10 faculties of Amitabha. So he loops and connects me. He's there at the gates of hell to loop and connect me to Abhidharma's pure land, you know, because I didn't know. And will further praise virtue, meditation, wisdom, emancipation, and the thorough knowledge that comes after emancipation. And after having heard this, he will be freed from his shortcomings, which would involve him in births and deaths during 80 million kalpas. Thereupon, those violent fires of hell will transform themselves into a pure and cool wind blowing above heavenly flowers. And after 6 kalpas, the lotus flower will encase him, and after 6 kalpas, it will open, and there will be Avalokiteshvara and Mahasambha. Thalma will soothe and encourage him with their Brahma voice and preach to him the deepest significance. And then finally, and I'm finished, there are beings who will be born in the lowest form of the lowest grade. If there's anyone who commits evil deeds and even completes the 10 wicked actions, the 5 deadly sins and the like, that man, being himself stupid and guilty of many crimes, deserves to fall into a miserable path of existence and suffer an endless pains during many kalpas. But on the eve of death, he will meet a good and learned teacher who will, soothing and encouraging him in various ways, preach to him the excellent Dhamma, teach him the remembrance of Buddha. But being harassed by pains, he will have no time to think about the Buddha. So some good friend will say to him, even if you cannot exercise the remembrance of the Buddha, at least you can utter the name Buddha Amitayus or Amitabha. Let him do so with his voice uninterrupted. And then he goes on to say, even if one cannot do that, the mere hearing of the name will expiate his sins, which would involve him in rebirths and deaths during innumerable causes. And in this way, all of the karma is satisfied. It's all it takes from us. He's saying, if you have the faith that can ascend to this, if you can't, you got to do some work. If you can, it's like the difference in the Bible when it talks about the landowner, and he hired a crew to work all day. He said, I'll pay you this amount of money. And they were so happy because he was paying above and beyond what the work was worth. And they worked all day happily, for this big check. Then somebody came in the last hour. He hired them too. And it was time to get paid, and he's paying everybody. He paid the workers who came in the last hour the same amount he paid the workers who worked all day. And the workers who worked all day, they were upset because they got the same amount of money. And he said, what is it to you if I choose to be merciful to them? You got what you agreed on. You got what, and it was above and beyond even what, what it was worth. Is you were happy with it, but upset because I give grace to somebody else and let them also enjoy to let you know the state, the true state of your mind. And so in these ways, we think deeply and we can grow and penetrate to the meaning of a Dharma that is not common, that is not ordinary. And by virtue of our taking it up, by virtue of our even hearing about it, knowing about it, by virtue of our putting forth a little bit of effort to develop some, we just have to give a little to this, because it's really by the powers of the completed work of the awakened ones that anything gets done. And how wonderful. He said that when we do these things, we will be called the white lotuses, friends of the bodhisattvas. So last night, instead of us giving a gift, we received a gift. We received the designation of white lotus because we recited the name of Amitabha Buddha, because she could not even utter it herself. And we explained that world and that she could have an aspiration to step into it right then. And we gave her the steps that's laid out to us by those who we consider accomplished. Now, we don't consider them accomplished. We ain't talking about nothing. But those that we consider accomplished, and following their exhortation and instruction. And I'm just thinking today, what a beautiful world. That even in this world with all its degradation, we have opportunities like this. Yeah. May you be well and happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you, no danger. May you always be able to meet the inevitable difficulties of life. And I'm going to suggest to you that you practice the Amitabha meditation on rebirth in Pure Land.